The nonprofit MBA purpose is to provide new business insights and fresh creative ideas for executive directors and their teams that will help them improve their organization. Here is your host, Stephen Halasnik.
Welcome everyone. My name is Stephen Halasnik and I will be your host for today's Nonprofit MBA podcast. This is like my 420th episode. It's been a great experience doing it. I just can't believe like 6 years ago I started it and I said, oh, let's see what happens. And we're in 6 years later. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm co-founder of Financing Solutions. And Financing Solutions over the last 12 years now has been the leading provider of lines of credit for small nonprofits in the United States. If you're interested in learning about a line of credit for your nonprofit, please visit us at nonprofitmbapodcast.com. And you can get a free quote there. It's easy to get it. You can see exactly if you're qualified and for how much and how much it costs and all this other stuff. It's just a very popular product, very hard for nonprofits to get a line of credit. And that's what we do for a living. Today, also, we have a sponsor, Araize, A-R-A-I-Z-E. Araize is really, I really believe in what they do. And so much so that one of the nonprofits that I'm a board member on is we're now moving over to them. It's accounting software specifically made for small to medium-sized nonprofits. I'm a firm believer that you should be using accounting software that's made for your industry. QuickBooks is not a really good solution, and Araize is specifically made for nonprofits by CPAs. So if you're interested in learning more about Araize, you can go to their website at araize.com or call 866-840-7449. You can speak to Joe and tell him that I sent you. Today, I'm very excited to be speaking with Chad Barger from Productive Fundraising. And today's topic is going to be 7 keys to nonprofit fundraising success. Chad helps nonprofits professionals across the U.S. and Canada fundraise more efficiently and effectively. He's a top-rated speaker, master trainer, and coach. Chad owns the firm Productive Fundraising, which specializes in teaching the latest research-based fundraising tactics and making them approachable for small community-based nonprofit organizations. He also offers free monthly seminars as well. And Chad, welcome again to today's Nonprofit MBA podcast.
Thank you, Stephen. It's great to be back and looking forward to our conversation today.
When you do the monthly webinars, what do you cover?
We kind of walk through everything over the course of the year. Try to be pretty timely. So in September, we're going to cover how to optimize your end of calendar year fundraising appeal. In December, we might be looking at fundraising planning because we're getting ready for next year. And then just last month, we did monthly giving because this kind of March, April timeframe is typically the best time of year to try to convert those end of year donors to monthly donors. So timely, but very tactical. How do I do this in my small to mid-sized shop?
Do you find that, how long have you been doing this now?
This is all I've ever done. So this is like year 26 for me.
Yeah.
Did 20 years as a frontline fundraiser and then fell into this whole consulting trainer coach gig.
You find if you had taken, I'm sure you hadn't done webinars for 25 years. I'm sure it came on a little later, but if you would look at every single month, January, February, March, the topics that you have and if you went back 15 years, would those same topics have been discussed then? I mean,
think some of them,
maybe 80%.
Yeah, but definitely a lot of the new online engagement tools. Monthly giving wasn't a thing back then. So there's certainly evolution, but we still would have been talking about fundraising events. We still would have been talking about direct mail. We obviously would have been talking about face-to-face donor visits and building those relationships. But yeah, slow evolution. But I find I kind of have a monthly cycle of 12 webinars. I'm usually swapping 1 or 2 out a year that just don't have as much resonance or something else has become more of a priority.
Yeah, cool. All right, listen, let's get right into the topic today, which is, the keys to nonprofit fundraising success, the 7 keys. So let's start off with number one. What is the number one key to nonprofit fundraising success?
Yeah. Let me set this up a tiny bit first, and then we'll dive right into number one. But I work primarily with small to mid-size community-based groups. So, they have an executive director, and maybe that's it, or maybe there's a part-time development person or an assistant. So there's just not a lot of capacity to do all the things, as I like to say. So I try to find ways that they can really focus and do couple key things really well, and then maybe you don't have to do everything. You don't have to do a whole peer-to-peer component and 17 events and all of this. So that's what kind of birthed this idea and this guide, and why I focused in, just because I saw that it's such a pain point for so many small groups.
Well,
But
it's
number
also
one,
it's also true too. I would say is it's very easy to get distracted with a million ideas. But the key to a successful organization is all about execution, isn't it? So it's better
yeah.
to do one thing and be great at it than to do 15 things and be not so great at them all, right? So I like the idea that you're narrowing it down.
Yeah, I teach fundraising at 2 different colleges, and I use the same textbook. It's Nonprofit Fundraising 101, edited by Heyman. It has 24 chapters, each with a different way you can fundraise. And my goal is to take it from the 24 to, all right, let's focus just here, and exactly what you said. Let's do them really well rather than doing everything mediocre or even poorly, which is what I see a lot. So that first one is actually not even really viewed as fundraising for everyone. And that is to adopt a retention first fundraising philosophy. So before you even send out a solicitation, ask anyone to contribute, even, recruit new board members, I want you to build that retention system. So I'm talking about, what happens after someone makes a gift. What happens is, certainly they should get that gift acknowledgement letter. Everyone should, not just the people that have given over $250 that we have to send one to per the IRS. But, and is that on behalf of the board of directors of ABC organization, thank you for your $25 contribution made on August 1st. No, I want some heartfelt thanks and telling stories and really starting that relationship from day one. And then from there, I want to build out a cycle, almost like what we'd call a funnel in the sales world a little bit, of what is going to happen. When is the next time I'm hoping to solicit them? Maybe 6 months down the line, 3 months down the line. And then I need touch points in there that's going to make them feel important, like a trusted partner, not just a piggy bank. We're going to educate, inform, and invite them to get more involved. So kind of going back on research done by Penelope Burke and Cygnus Research on, what do donors want to hear from us in order to stick around? And we have that fundraising law of 7 that comes out of there. They want to hear from us 7 times between asks where we're not asking them for anything. We're just making them feel like that trusted partner in this process. So before we even solicit, I want that set up. I want to know what that looks like, because once the money starts coming, you're just going to try to get more money. You're not going to focus on that. We see it, year in, year out, with the donor retention rate in the U.S. stuck at 43%. The average nonprofit loses over half its donors each year. So let's fix that before we even get started.
Okay. What's the next one?
Next one. So once we're going to solicit, let's go back to the tried and true, what's been working since the dawn of fundraising time, and that's mail. But I don't want to just send any old mail. I want response-optimized mail appeals, right? From the beginning, it's set up to boost response. It's not just something we shove out the door, or, I got to write the mail appeal letter. I'm going to do it in one afternoon. It's a well-thought-out process. For end of calendar year appeals, I like to start them in September. And I say September is for story. What is your story? Because that is the key to a successful fundraising appeal. It's not the ask. It's telling me a compelling story that is going to make me want to participate. So starting in September, and then in October, we're actually going to write it. And in November, we're going to get the package together. Because the package, what it goes in, is just as important as the letter itself. You got to get me to open it before you even have a chance for me to read your compelling story that's going to drive me to action. So looking at those two pieces, what's my package? How can I make it look more and more like a piece of personal correspondence? And how can I make it stand out in the mailbox? So when people are coming in from the mailbox, maybe they're in their garage, standing over their recycle bin, doing the daily mail sort, I want to go into the read later pile and not into the recycle bin.
Maxwell Halasnik. Sorry, keep going. I'm sorry about that. Go ahead.
Yeah, and on the letter side, we really need to tell that compelling story. And we have the phrase that we make the donor the hero. So we use that you language. And we don't always use this kind of language. I'm not one for donor-centric language everywhere. We want to involve lots of other people. But when we're talking specifically to a donor, let's make them a part of it. Because of you. Without you, this wouldn't be possible. Because of your support. And then that ask. It's a compelling ask. It's a specific ask, ideally in specific ask amount based on their past support. We're maybe asking them to join us. And we repeat that at the very end of that letter with a PS. A lot of people push back on the PS. But when you actually do look at the research, 90% of people will read a PS. And I'm not going to ask them to come to my event or remember my organization in their will. I'm going to repeat that ask. Would you consider making a generous donation of $500 today? The kids are counting on you.
Gotcha. Okay. What's the next one?
Number 3, those events, those fundraising events. Many nonprofits spend a lot of time doing fundraising events. I've been in really small shops where it's 1 or 2 people and they have 8 events. They're just constantly in event mode. And while events serve a purpose, they're not the best way to raise money. They don't have the highest return on investment. So if I'm going to do events, I want to focus. So I say just 2 events per year with a focus on sponsors, not attendees. So just 2. That keeps the time down. I find most groups can pull off 2. And the real beauty with events is it's kind of the best way to get new people engaged with our organization. They're public, they're fun. It's easy for our board members or volunteers to invite somebody to our events. And then rather than worrying about selling $150 tickets, I'd much rather worry about selling $1,500, $10,000 sponsorships. Just with a couple of those, it doesn't really matter what the attendees do. I can fill those seats. I can invite volunteers, donors, anyone to be the guest of the organization if I have those sponsorship dollars ahead of time. And what's the key there? Starting early. Everybody struggles with sponsorships because they try to start 2 months before an event of recruiting sponsors. I don't know if anybody's walked through that process lately, but most, I'll take a regional bank, for example. You contact them, then they invite you to apply through their online portal. Then you get put into the queue to be reviewed by somebody. Once you pass that, then you make it to the meeting. The meeting seems to always get canceled and you get bumped to the next month. So it's like 4 months typically to even hear from them. So if you're not starting till 2 months out, you don't stand a chance. So I like, 6 months generally starting before. And for some of those big ones, those presenting sponsorships, it's like 9 months plus sometimes. It's almost like you have the event and then you have the follow-up meeting right away to line up that following year. So just 2 events per year with sponsors, not attendees being the focus.
Okay. Next one.
Number 4, outsource your grant writing. Unless you are a 20-year grant writing pro that has now assumed a bigger operation, bigger role, I guarantee you there's someone in your community that can write your grants better than you. And what I find that grant writing does is it ties the executive director, the development professional, to their desk. And the most successful development people don't spend much time at their desk because they're out in the community talking with donors, growing relationships, finding new opportunities. So it's usually the one piece that you can easily outsource. Now, it's not a outsource and don't monitor it. You still have to monitor the process. But almost every community has someone that, served as 20 years in-house and now does outsourced grant writing. They're typically very economical. Every market differs, but my favorite example is I will gladly spend $500 to have a grant written that could get me $10,000. And especially when that person knows that foundation, has already submitted 15 proposals to them this year, knows what they're looking for, and can make sure our proposal is optimized that way.
Let me ask you a question on that, because I don't have familiarity with having hired a grant writer and them applying. I have lots of grant writers that are on this podcast, but to me, it makes a lot of sense to just bring on a grant writer, because when we win, I pay the grant writer. Now, I'm not saying we don't pay them up front, but to me, it's a numbers game. We're going to apply for a certain amount of grants. We're going to win 25% of them. I don't know, 10% of them, right? It's just a numbers game. Now, yes, I do understand that it could be restricted, the grants. But is that fair to say it's kind of a win-win scenario for me to hire a grant writer and go to apply for grants, as long as I probably have my organization's story together?
Yeah. If you have the pieces in place, it can certainly work. If you're talking about bringing a grant writer in-house full
No,
or
I wasn't talking
half-time,
about that. Yeah. I was
yeah.
talking about
I
a
mean,
consultant.
that's a volume situation. Like if you have
Right.
enough grants to do it, then I'm
Yeah.
all for a position.
Sure.
But most
Sure.
small shops, they're like, we do 10 to 15 a year. And they always hit all at the same time and just completely like take 3 weeks away from me. And then I'm behind on everything else. So yeah, it's totally a numbers game. But unfortunately, a lot of, I hate to pick on them, but especially boards of directors of small nonprofits don't like to do that upfront investment in fundraising.
See, to me, I would be like, if in my board meeting, right, I'd be like, if let's say the executive director came to our board meeting and said, I need someone to donate from the board, or someone that we know who we can go to and say listen, I need $5,000 so that I can hire a grant writer and we can apply. And I believe if we apply for these 5 awards, we'll win one of them, and therefore we'll get $10,000 in money, and
Right.
Whatever it is,
And then that relieves the money over here that we can use to pay for future grant writing.
I mean, if I was a donor, I'd be like, yeah, that makes complete sense. And let's face it, a lot of your donors are business people. They get the idea behind investing.
I think a lot of time that business case is just not made to them. They're just trained to, okay, it's nonprofit. We got to cut costs, stay lean, worrying about overhead and expense ratios and all that stuff that just limits the capacity of the sector all the time. And truly, the number you said is just about right. Like if you could put up $5,000 to do an initial investment with an outsourced grant writer, and they're going to get, 5 to 10 grants in for you, depending on market, I think you're rolling and you're set.
Yeah, I do know that on prior podcasts I've had, the biggest problem that people do is they don't ask for unrestricted funds.
Mm-hmm.
It's, they're so afraid of the idea of people thinking that, it's because of, was it the United Way or, a lot of those issues where, 97% of the funds are going into, I don't know what it is, but like administrative costs, and people know that story and they get pissed. They're like, no, I want it to go to the people who are going to use it, so.
Yeah, definitely. If we just could focus there, and I've seen, if it doesn't say you can't include administrative costs, include it. Put 10, 15, 20% admin in, and if they don't want to do it, they'll bulk, but at least try.
Yeah, cool. All right, what's the next one?
All right, number 5. So I just freed up some time for you. We're only doing 2 events a year instead of 6, and you're outsourcing your grant writing. So you got a little bit of time. So now you can finally meet with your donors. You can finally go out there. That's what I hear all the time. Chad, I would love to meet with my donors. Coffees, lunches, sounds great, but I just got too much to do. Well, we saved some time.
Podcast.
Okay. What's that?
I'm sorry. I apologize. My fault. Go ahead.
No problem. So we've saved some time. So let's use that to meet with our donors. So I say build personal relationships with the top 10% of your donors. If you can't get to the whole top 10, top 5, what's your top 20? Just time to go out and deepen those relationships, because our number one rule in fundraising is people give to people, not emails. People give to people that they know, like, and trust. I've heard it changed to people that they know, love, and trust. It's just that key, that personal connection. And in this, whatever we're calling it, post-COVID era, we see the value of relationships even more. I mean, we had those lonely 2 years or so where it didn't happen. And Zoom donor calls, I don't care how many blog posts I've read, they're just horrible. It's hard to have that personal connection and build that. So you've got time, go do that. Get to know your top donors. That's where the major gifts are going to come from, by deepening those relationships.
Also if you haven't worked in the for-profit world, one of the biggest issues you have in the for-profit world is the president of the company or the owner. They lose touch with their customers. If the organization gets big enough, they lose touch. And so, 30 years ago, I started my career working for Xerox, which for those of you who aren't old, Xerox was the Google of its day. And the CEO made it a point, this is a $15 billion company at the time. Once a month, he would travel with the sales force to go meet customers. And, it sounds like a no-brainer, but for-profit companies have a problem staying in touch with the best clients. And so nonprofits have a problem staying in touch with their best donors. And you know what it does too? I kind of see that it re-energizes you too, right? Because it's about people. But then when you're in a leadership role, it's a lot of times you're dealing with strategy meetings and administrative issues, and the people part of it isn't there as much.
Yeah. As you talk, I'm thinking of that TV show Undercover Boss, where the boss goes undercover dressed up, and they're an employee for a while, and then they're out with people, and they just want to reconnect and see what it's really like. And I often encourage people to do that, like be a secret shopper for another nonprofit in your community, and you trade. They're a secret shopper for you. So you make like a $25 contribution, and then you're on their mailing list, and you just kind of monitor that experience. And then like twice a year, you meet for lunch and coffee and just say, hey, you sent me like 3 things in 1 week, and then I didn't hear from you for 3 months. And you're just kind of monitoring that donor experience for them.
And by the way, I don't want to lead everybody to think that this is easy, right? I mean, really get this number 5 of getting out and meeting with donors. It's not easy, especially when you're talking about running 2 fundraising events, getting out mailers, and we're also talking about small nonprofits. So, it's a challenge. But if you could set a goal for yourself of going out once a month with 1 donor, you can't get to 2 until you've done 1, right? So
the old Peter Drucker adage, right? What gets measured gets managed. So
that's right.
Let's set a goal and measure something.
Right, and you can't manage something that can't be measured. So All right, what's number 6?
Number 6. All right, we're focusing our attention on that top 10%, which means, unfortunately, we don't have the time to focus on the 90% below them. I don't like to say that bottom word, but the under there. As much as I would love to spend face-to-face time with them as well, it's just really hard to do in a small shop. Colleges and things, they'll get annual fund and mid-level folks, and they can do more, but we have to leverage our time. I do like focusing some time on first-year donors. I think that's worth doing as well, regardless of giving them out. But with that other 90%, I try to convert many of them as possible to recurring monthly giving. And this just has to be an ongoing focus everywhere in our organization. Every single ask is monthly first. Even in our mail, which seems like it's not the place to do it, we're going to ask them to do monthly. It's actually working really well now to embed a QR code right in the middle of a fundraising appeal letter that can take them to the giving page. And guess what? Recurring is auto-selected and ready to go. but we have to tell them why. And that's another benefit of the last few years, because we have a word that really resonates now and really ties in great with recurring monthly giving, and that's sustainability. Right? Your monthly gift ensures that our operations are sustainable and will always be here for the people in need. It just kind of resonates and clicks a little better than it used to. But the average recurring, I said it earlier, retention rate for all donors is 43%. For recurring monthly donors, it's 85% the day they sign on. And if they're still with you 5 years later, it's 95%.
Wow.
It just keeps coming.
That's unbelievable. That sure saves you a lot of time too, and have to go back and try to get that other 57% people back in the queue. So, I mean, look at it, a time saver, even more so than the money saving part of it, because then you can use that 57% of your time to get other people, right?
Yeah, other people, more donor visits, all those, let's just reinvest in what's working with that time. But people give up on monthly giving because they'll send an email appeal once a year asking their current donors to switch to monthly giving. They get 1, 2, maybe 0, and they're like, oh, we tried. But it's just all the time, every appeal, every spot. We ask that first, and that social proof really helps too. Let's feature current recurring donors talking about why they give on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, I wish someone could come up with a different word than sustainability, because I don't think that means a lot to people. Well, maybe it's just because I'm a businessman, and what really resonates with me is when I hear, and I do recurring a lot when I make donations, because it's nice for the nonprofit to know that money is going to come in on a monthly, consistent basis. So, I know that's what sustainability means, but what it really means more to me is cash flow. Right. Like if someone says, listen, this really helps my maybe it's because I'm in the business of providing
I think
credit,
for non-business people, sustainability and cash flow were both jargon words that, didn't really have much meaning, but we just heard that sustainability word so much that they finally kind of caught on there.
Yeah.
I tell the story that I had 2 clients when COVID hit that both had over 60% of their donors giving monthly. They were anomalies, fairly recent startups. They knew this worked, and that was kind of their business model from the beginning. Those were the only 2 groups that did not call me in a panic within 3 days, right? We didn't talk until their regularly scheduled coaching call. And when we did, they're like, this stinks, but we'll be okay. We have this base. We might not be able to do our fall event. If that happens, we'll do a non-event. We'll find a way. But, it just really completely changes the model, and I think completely changes the stress level for a lot of organizations.
Are there any nonprofits who only do recurring revenue streams?
I've never heard of only, simply because if somebody sends you a check, what are you going to do? Send it back and say, go to our...
Yeah.
But there's certainly ones that make it difficult or more of a challenge to do that. Like you can't do it online. You would have to maybe pull my 990 to get a mailing address because that's not online.
Or maybe they just do like it defaults to recurring, right?
Yeah. And that certainly is best practice, even though a lot of people have a challenge with it. I'm trying to remember the statistic. I think it's a 35% increase in monthly giving enrollments if you have it pre-checked on your website. That's research by the late, great John Hayden. And, it's just people are like, oh, I don't want to dupe them into it. Well, you don't dupe them into it. You have a disclaimer right there. You're signing up for monthly. When you go to the next page, there's an extra checkbox they check to say, I understand I'm signing up as a monthly supporter, but the mere fact that it's pre-selected and we're telling them why can really help there.
Yeah, I get it. All right. What's the last one? Number 7.
Number 7, the hardest one for most people. They do all this work and they throw themselves into this job, and they're passionate about their cause. They're helping the kids, the animals, whoever, and they do it at the expense of themselves. So Number 7 is prioritizing self-care. Yeah. And I include that as one of the 7 keys because I truly believe it. I'm not, just putting it there. I almost put it first, but then I thought people would just kind of tune out. but it's got to be in there because you do all this stuff. As you said, it's already a lot. And if you're not going to take time for you, whatever that means, exercise, spirituality, sleep, hobbies, family, whatever charges you up, I want that on your calendar. I want, 2-3 hours a week, this time to make sure this happens. Because I guarantee you, if you do that, you will do all other of these 6 things with so much more energy and focus and attention that, it'll just magnify your results even more.
People who have done these 7 steps well, what have you noticed about them?
Frankly, they're happier. Like the passion for the job. I'm a fundraising coach and consultant. People don't come to me unless something's wrong, right?
Yep.
It's not like, oh, things are amazing, let's go find the coach. So, they're coming in with a pain point. So we work to fix that, and then might work them towards this program or components of it that make sense for their operation. And once one of these items is humming well, I notice a distinct change that, it's a little easier, and they're seeing more success, and that self-assurance and reward comes back, and, I'm taking time for me too, and life's just a little better.
Yeah.
And I remember why I started working in this sector and for this cause in the first place. And it's not just a job anymore.
What about the reverse? People who, you've brought on to coach, and they just do a bad job in these 7 steps, even after you've done your tremendous job of coaching, I'm sure. But that they really struggle with it. What is it about those people that they're just not doing a good job in it?
It's all over the place, different reasons. I always joke that I really should have a counseling degree for, about a third of the calls are dealing with, personal issues or staff issues, that just kind of those barriers in the way. Sometimes it's just a lack of trust that it can't be this easy. Sometimes it's bored or other pressure to go in different directions. A little bit of everything, but, it's just, something is blocking them from being able to focus on this. And, sometimes it's a committee member or former founder that says, we've always done it this way, we can't change. But yeah, it's just always there. And frankly, that's not why I coach. So those relationships last about 3 months, and then we kind of graciously part ways. And I say, if you think you're able to do this, come on back, but I'm not going to waste my time and your money.
Yeah. How much time does it take for you to typically coach somebody?
So going through this program, I like to work with somebody kind of 6 to 9 months, where they'll, focus, 2 to 3 weeks really learning the ins and outs of that. And then we're going to take some time together to how is that best implemented in your shop. And I'm going to walk through each step one at a time. And over the course of, 6 months, if they're really focused and have the time, 9 months if they got to do a million other things. Sometimes it can go a little longer, but certainly in a year, you can put this in place in your shop and have a much more successful and frankly easier year that following year.
And it's once every 2 weeks. How many times do you meet with them?
Well, that's the beauty, is that people stress out about that. So it's self-paced.
Okay.
Once you do the work, once you've learned and know and have thought about how you might implement it, then we touch base and we work on the next step. Because standard coaching calls, about a third of them get rescheduled because, something just blows up that day. So it's your pace, but I'm there to walk along right with you.
So I kept notes as we were talking. So I kind of want to summarize, and then Chad, if you can just correct me. Number 1 was, work with current donors, really kind of make sure.
Philosophy.
Yeah, the retention's number 1. Number 2 is kind of have a plan, have a plan how you're going to, I guess, assume like how you're going to do the next 12 months, what you're going to do every single month. And which include,
plan. It's got response optimized appeals in it to make sure that happens.
We talked about mailers and that, those type of things. Number 3 was events. Plan 2 events, not 7. Plan 2 or whatever it was. Plan 2.
Focus on those sponsors. Yeah.
Right. Focus on the sponsors, right, which I thought was a great idea. Number 4, outsource grant writing.
You got it.
And we talked a lot about that, like the advantages and how looking at it as an investment versus a cost. Number 5, I have meeting with donors. On a monthly basis,
Yeah,
right?
focusing on that top 10%. And I loved your idea of set a goal.
Yeah,
Everybody can do one a month. I don't care
yeah,
how busy you are. You can do
yeah.
one a month. You need to eat as well. So do a lunch once a month and make it happen. Then work up to 2,
Yeah, and keep in mind too is like even if like let's say you have I'm sure you have if the organization has a small staff, you can also go to one of the people who are working with you and say, I want you to hold me accountable to this, or I want you to schedule this for me.
Right.
I just want to see one person once a month for the next 3 months, and I need you to kind of make sure I stay on track on this. Hold me
You know
accountable.
how they happen in higher ed in big college shops? It is a key metric in their compensation. Like in order to be considered for a bonus this year, you have to meet your physical.
Yeah.
I had one for many years. What gets measured gets managed. It's
Yeah. I
amazing.
mean, I loved meeting with my person from my college. As a donor, I was a donor. Then number 6 is focus on the top 10%. So focus on the top 10% of your donors.
Yeah, 6 was the top 10% through those monthly meetings, meeting with those key donors. 6, 5 actually. 6 is that monthly program. Making sure we got that
The
monthly
monthly
program where we're
reoccurring.
putting that
That's
first.
right.
Yeah.
Reoccurring. Yeah. Recurring donations. Interesting statistics, 43%. Wait, no, that's what you lose, people. But when you have a reoccurring revenue from somebody on a monthly basis, what was the statistic?
85% from the day they click give monthly.
And then 96 after 5 years.
Yeah, it just grows from there.
Unbelievable.
They're also the most likely to make legacy or planned gifts because
Wow.
they're just always with you,
Wow. And then number 7, prioritizing self-care as well, which was something I actually say at the end of every single podcast for this nonprofit MBA podcast.
Yeah, we're horrible at it. I think we're worse than corporate folk. We just
it's obvious why. I mean, if you really, really care about your cause and you put that above everything else, but
you can't be a martyr for your cause. Otherwise, you're going to burn out in the sector. I look back 25 years ago, the people I started with, and how many of them are still in the nonprofit field, and it's definitely less than half.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, that was great stuff. I'd like to thank so very much all the time we have for today, and I'd like to thank so very much Chad Barger from Productive Fundraising for coming on to today's podcast. And if you like today's podcast, please feel free to share it with a friend, and also subscribe on your favorite podcasting app. And if you like today's podcast, please give us a review. It really helps us get the word out. And if you're looking for a line of credit, of course, please visit our website at nonprofitmbapodcast.com. And Chad, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, best place is productivefundraising.com. I actually have a free download right on the front page there with a printout guide for these 7 keys to fundraising success. And I go by Fundraiser Chad on pretty much all the social networks.
Yes, and your last name is spelled Barger, just so that everybody knows.
That is correct.
Well. Yeah. Well, very good. Thanks for coming on today.
Sure thing, Stephen. It's a pleasure.
So as I mentioned, at the end of every podcast, I always say I want to thank our listeners for doing the hard and heavy lifting of making the world a better place. We really need your help. Speaking from a citizen of the United States, we really need your help and of the world, of course. I know Chad and I try to do our part on our own individual way, but you guys are out there every day making a big difference. I thank you for that. I just want to remind you that you need to come first, as Chad said. You're no good to your family, your friends, yourself, your employees, your cause, if you don't prioritize yourself. So, the first thing you should be thinking about when you wake up every morning isn't what you have planned for that day for work. You'd be thinking about, how am I going to get my exercise routine in today? How am I going to eat right? How am I going to take some time for myself so that I can be the best I can be on a daily basis, on a yearly basis? So please consider that. I know it's hard, and I know you can do it. So other than that, I want to wish everybody to have a great day. And again, welcome to today's Nonprofit MBA podcast. See you later.